Every day, in hatcheries around the world, millions of baby birds are born. They peck their way out of their shells. They're wet, they're exhausted, and within hours, a lot of them will be dead. Not from disease, not from weakness, from something they had no control over the moment they were conceived. Their sex. Now, before we go further, let's clear something up because it trips almost everyone up. You do eat male chickens. Probably all the time. Most of the chicken on your plate right now, statistically, has about a coin flip's chance of having been male. The chicken breast in your fridge doesn't come with a sex on the label, and that's because for the meat industry, sex mostly doesn't matter. So if that's true, if we already eat roughly equal numbers of male and female chickens, why does a video with this title even exist? Because there's a second group of chickens where the math is nothing like a coin flip, where being born male is closer to a death sentence. Here's the setup. Chickens raised for eggs and chickens raised for meat are not the same animal anymore. Over the last century, breeders split them into two completely separate genetic lines. One line, called broilers, was bred for meat. Grow fast, put on muscle, reach slaughter weight in about 6 weeks. Broiler chicks are hatched in what's called straight run, meaning males and females are raised together, side by side, no sorting involved. Since they're slaughtered so young, sex barely affects their size or their taste. A male broiler and a female broiler end up looking, tasting, and cooking almost identically, so the industry doesn't bother separating them. That's the group that ends up as roughly half of all the chicken meat you've ever eaten. The other line is called layers, and this is where things change completely. Layer hens were bred for a single purpose: pump out as many eggs as possible, as efficiently as possible. A modern layer hen can produce close to 300 eggs a year. But breeding an animal that's specialized comes with a trade-off. A layer hen's entire genetic code is optimized for laying eggs, not for growing meat. And a male chick from a layer breed inherits that same genetic code, minus the one thing that makes it useful. He'll never lay an egg, obviously, and he also doesn't have the genetics to grow into a decent meat bird. He's not big enough, he doesn't put on weight fast enough, and raising him to slaughter size would take way longer and cost way more than just raising an actual broiler chicken instead. So from the hatchery's perspective, he isn't a future rooster. He's a byproduct, a cost with no return. And hatcheries move fast. Chicks are sexed within hours of hatching. There are people whose entire job is this: professional chick sexers, trained for months to identify the sex of a one-day-old bird by looking at its wing feathers, or, in some methods, its vent. It takes them seconds per chick. The females get sorted onto one conveyor. They'll spend the next year and a half of their lives laying eggs. The males get sorted onto another conveyor. And that conveyor leads somewhere very different. In the US alone, roughly 300 million male layer chicks are culled this way every single year. Worldwide, some estimates put the number at close to 7 billion. 7 billion animals born and killed within about 24 hours. Every single year, not because they're male chickens in general, but because they're male chickens born into the one specific system that has no use for them. The methods used to kill them are not something most people know about, and honestly, most people who do know don't like to think about it. The most common industrial method is called maceration, which is exactly what it sounds like: high-speed grinding machines. It's fast, and by industry standards it's considered instantaneous, which is the justification used to call it humane. The other common method is a gas chamber, using carbon dioxide to suffocate large batches of chicks at once. Either way, the outcome is the same. A chick that hatched that morning does not see the next day. And here's the part that stings the most if you actually sit with it. These aren't unhealthy animals. They're not sick. They're not deformed. They're not weak. They're genetically identical, more or less, to the roosters that live full lives on small farms and backyards all over the world. The only thing wrong with them, in the eyes of the industry, is which breed they hatched into. Now, you might be thinking, why not just raise them anyway? Sell them as cheap meat the same way broiler males get sold? And people have tried. A company in the Netherlands called Kipster actually does this. Instead of culling the male chicks born to their laying hens, they let the roosters grow for about 15 weeks and then process them into meat products. It's a real alternative, and it works. But it's not cheap. A layer breed rooster grows slowly, eats a lot along the way, and never reaches the size a broiler reaches in the same amount of time. Raising him to slaughter weight costs significantly more than raising a bird bred specifically for meat, and most consumers, when they're standing in the grocery aisle, are going to pick the cheaper package every time. That price gap is the entire reason culling exists in the first place, and it's also the reason most farms haven't switched. There's also a version of this problem that goes the other direction, and it's just as strange once you notice it. Broiler hens, the females in the meat line, are sometimes seen as slightly less efficient than the males, because male broilers tend to convert feed into muscle a bit faster and grow a little larger. It's a small enough difference that most broiler operations don't bother separating the sexes at all, which is exactly why both end up on your plate. But it's a reminder that this entire industry runs on a very simple, very cold question for every single bird. What does this animal's body convert into, and how efficiently? Eggs, muscle, or nothing? And the answer to that question, decided before the animal even exists, is what determines whether it lives. So if raising them isn't economical, what about stopping the problem before it starts? That's actually where things are heading, and it's the one genuinely hopeful part of this story. It's called in-ovo sexing. The idea is simple. Instead of hatching every egg and then sorting the chicks, you determine the sex of the embryo while it's still inside the shell, days before it would even hatch. Some methods analyze a tiny sample of fluid from the egg for hormone markers. Others use imaging technology to detect early feather color differences, or even use spectroscopy to read chemical signals through the shell without opening it at all. Once a male egg is identified, it's removed from the incubator before it ever becomes a living chick. No hatching, no sorting, no conveyor belt. This technology isn't science fiction. It's already running in commercial hatcheries. France and Germany passed laws banning the culling of live male chicks, specifically because in-ovo sexing had become viable enough to replace it. Other countries in the EU are moving in the same direction. It's slow, and it's not universal yet, and outside of Europe it's barely been adopted at all. But for the first time in over a century of industrial egg farming, there's an actual off-ramp from this practice that doesn't require anyone to eat less eggs or pay drastically more for them. It's worth saying plainly one more time, because it's easy to lose the thread. This was never a story about male chickens being edible or inedible. Roosters have been eaten by humans for thousands of years. In plenty of cultures they still are. And right now, at this exact moment, half the chicken in supermarket freezers everywhere came from a male bird. The real story is about which male chickens get bred for a purpose, and which ones get bred into a system that was only ever designed for their sisters. Timing and economics, not taste, not edibility, decide who gets to grow up. There's something almost unsettling about how invisible that distinction is. Every carton of eggs represents a hen that got to live out her life laying them. It also represents a brother who never got the chance to do anything at all. He didn't get sick, he didn't get old, he was never even the wrong species or the wrong animal. He just happened to hatch on the wrong side of a breeding line that was decided generations before he existed. Whether that changes probably comes down to whichever happens faster. In-ovo sexing spreading to enough hatcheries to make culling unnecessary, or enough people finding out this happens at all and deciding they'd rather pay a little more not to be part of it. Right now, both are moving, just slowly. And until one of them catches up, somewhere in a hatchery right now, a conveyor belt is splitting a batch of one-day-old chicks into two lines. One of them gets a life, the other doesn't. And the only thing that decided which line each of them ended up on was a chromosome they never had any say in.